you a small business owner, a trader, a school owner, a federal civil servant, a Lagos or Edo civil servant, a farmer or a farm supply merchant? Do you need a loan or wish to fix your money for a high yield interest? Talk to us today and get your loan in less than 24 hours. Visit our website on www.lapo-nigeria.org or call us on 0813-984-0230. Email info@lapo-nigeria.org.
Globally, businesses and corporations are faced with challenges that requires fresh thinking on strategy, leadership, and governance to survive. The Anchor is a program designed to help organizations and individuals to be skilled in handling challenges. Join Dr. Osaren Emokpae, a development economist and a corporate strategist.
It is my pleasure to welcome you to today's episode of the Anchor. And today we are taking the fourth in the series we are discussing on managing organizational performance. We've taken 3 episodes already in that series. We are taking the fourth during this episode. Now, but before I will delve into this fourth frame, I want to once again thank Mr. Tebepina, who is with us in the studio today. I've introduced him past episodes, and the one I call Professor Anya, who also, because he's from the John School of Management, and I want to welcome you. And you are actually going to start this discussion today. So can you take us into how we look at this very fourth episode and what we can discuss in enhancing how to manage performance?
Thank you very much. To start this episode, we are going to look at, and by the way, we are still on organizational performance. But for this episode, we are specifically going to look at considerations. What is it we must consider if we are going to measure organizational performance? So that's what we are going to look at. But to start with, I want to remind us of a game of arrow shooting. We understand that, and we know that the shooters usually target the bull's eye. That is the central point. But then they hardly hit that bull's eye. They either go closer or further. So that's how the measurement of organizational performance is. You may not measure it accurately, but it has to be measured. That's what we are talking about here. So what considerations are we talking about? We are talking of what are we going to measure, how are we going to measure it, and how are we going to use it. To start with, let me still remind us.
I remember just as we were talking about throwing this thing. I remember I used to do that, I used to play that. In my younger days, I had time then when I would go to one of the top clubs. When I say club, they are professional clubs. IOD and top professional club, I would say member Rotary, director of vocational service, and another one. So, and there was, when I get to the club, the game I was playing was dart. So there's a bullseye.
Yes,
in the
center. Yes.
Yeah, at the center. And you are throwing the dart. And you make more points if you are able to actually get the bullseye. Yes. So in terms of performance on that game, your ability to either consistently hit the bull's eye or be as close as possible to the bull's eye will give you higher scores. That's the way measure. I just thought I should.
That's how organizational performance. So
it's measured.
It doesn't have to be perfect because we are all imperfect human beings. But the closer you are to the bull's eye, so to say, the better. So what considerations are we talking about? Let me state again that 3 things. What are we going to measure? How are we going to measure it? And how are those metrics we measured going to be used? Namely, what are we going to measure, with how, and then what are we going to use it? Let me again define organizational performance, which we have been repeating during the previous episode. I would define it as how well an organization is doing in reaching its vision, mission, and goals. So precisely that's what it means. So I mentioned 3 things we are considering if we are going to measure organizational performance. One is the performance of the organization. What measures? What are we going to measure? We look at the profits, we look at the stock, we look at the price, if it produces the one that produces goods, and then says, how better are we? We don't just measure it and say, well, we have measured it. That leads me to the second one, that is performance referent. It is usually good that when we measure, we don't just take it that, yes, this is where we stand. Have we compared it to what is happening in the industry, or have we compared it to other company A or B or C? Let me give you an example. A company might make a profit of, say, 20% on its own, but across the industry, you see that that thing is considering profit is nothing. So that's why it's usually good for us to measure, and then we compare it across industry.
Yeah, for instance, there was this issue that happened. I remember when I was senior brand manager of the biggest detergent in Nigeria some years ago. I was a brand manager, and prior to that, I managed products. You know, we said we don't promote product, but for the purpose of the education of the people who are watching, it's good to give some examples. So I was managing Sunlight soap. I was the brand manager 1982 to 1985. I was the brand manager of Sunlight soap. And when we're going to look at the performance, you know, there was the performance of the product itself in terms of lathering and cleaning body. And because Sunlight itself was used to clean body for children, we needed for it to be soft on the skin of the children. Yes. But at the same time, Sunlight also was being used to wash delicate fabrics if you didn't want it to fade. So how do I ensure that we delivered on those three areas? In terms of itself, the lathering property, because people equated lathering with cleanliness at that time. Okay, lathering property. Number 2, how is he able to then watch them but will not injure them? You know. Number 3, how is he able to actually wash delicate fabrics? If you go to Area market, for instance, and you want to go and buy, you know, maybe in Area, you know, they do shoes there in Area market. They also sell even, there's a food section in Area. Some of you might say, maybe Area is far away in Aba. But let us talk about even Lagos, where we are. And you want to now, you go to the market. You say, I want to buy this rice. So they bring one, is it motu? They use it and then put, say, that's measure. Yes. At the local level, that's measured to them.
It is.
They say, I measured it for you. And they just want Derica.
So what is the performance?
Yes, they don't understand that. But when we talk of measurement professionally, it's not carrying that kind of Adana or whatever to carry gari or carry rice. It's a very serious issue when we talk about measures. Measures are strategic and tactical instruments to gauge and monitor performance. Performance in a way that goes and then cascaded to targets. They are achieved in the advancement of the vision of the organization. Of course, in that advancement, there is an intersection there which we call mission statement. Okay? So that is what measures are. And that is why when a professor is talking about performance measurement, we are not talking about carry market. We are not talking about using those things to measure rice. No. We are talking about serious issues, about using tools to actually gauge performance. And after gauged it, you then need to manage it in a way that will achieve ultimately the goals you've set for the organization. And usually those goals, we've spoken about alignment. They must align with your vision, they must align with your mission, and they must in some way relate to all the stakeholders. You know, it becomes a win-win thing for everyone. Prof, can you continue?
Yes, we are. Thank you very much. In addition, we shouldn't be satisfied of whatever level of performance we have achieved. Let us also go outside and compare it to what is obtainable in the industry. That's what I call the performance reference.
You know, that was where, you see, I just veered off. The point I mentioned about this when we were talking about reference. So when you were managing that brand, I used to compare, okay, if we say we are making 10% profit, now the main competitor at that time, I won't mention it, because those days you can't mention your competitor. If you use your competitor, they will be sacked on Unilever in those days. So the main competitor by one company that came from Greece, I won't mention the name, you know. So we will be comparing. How profitable is that? There were about 4 or 5 things we're only comparing. Okay? We'll compare in terms of bottom line. We will compare in terms of market share. We will compare in terms of perception of the product itself and the brand. So all these are related to the reference you are talking about. Yes. So that you are not just satisfied, I'm doing well yes, with my 5%, yes. And you go, you are happy home. When the person competing with you is getting 20%, I think that's the point. Carry on, sir.
It takes us to what happened to proverbial 6 blind men when they individually touched an elephant. Every one of them described it the way he felt it. The one that touched it on the head said, give a different description. Another one touched on the leg, another one touched on the body. So at the end of the whole time, or the whole, when they have all finished touching, they all describe the elephant in a different way based on where they touched. So that's what we are talking about, that when we measure, we don't just take it the way we are measured. Let's go out and compare it to our competitor, just as the anchor person has mentioned. That's all I can say for now about consideration for an organizational measurement. So 3 things we consider. What are we measuring? How are we measuring it? And how are we going to use what we have measured? These are the 3 major considerations for organizational performance.
Okay. And there is this issue about, thank you so much on those dimensions, that understanding of you have critical measurement tools, which also you can call strategic measuring tools. And then when you then measure, you see how you yourself you are doing. And sometimes if you just compare yourself with yourself, you can actually begin to fall behind the scene. You don't really know you are not doing well. Say, after this year, I got 1 naira more. When your own mate you started with, they are getting a 30 naira more. They are getting 30 naira more. So, and that there is the need that while you measure your own, but also be gauging what your competitors are doing in a way not for you to be irrelevant. Because the less people buy of you, the less profit you make, you are dying. You are dying. And so not to die, you need, to do that. But there's this other thing about these companies. There's this Fortune 500 companies in the United States of America. We spoke about it earlier today and about, career and the rest. But this Fortune 500, there's something that was very particular about them. Mr. Anya, maybe you want to quickly speak to that, and then Ebi can then come in.
Thank you very much. That's exactly what I have been saying about performance reference. This particular company, the Fortune 500, performed very well in terms of sales.
They are actually Fortune 500. There are different scales in which institutions measure organizational performance in the U.S. Fortune 500, there are 500 companies. They look at it at the very best in terms of deliverables to their stakeholders. That's what they use. Profitability, asset quality, tax they pay, how motivated their staff are, whatever. They put a lot of metrics together. into a basket. And that is how they then come about Fortune 500. So people usually want to work for one of these 500 companies, want to work for them because of certain things in which they do and how they also measure performance, not only of employees, even of themselves as well. Maybe you want to go for that.
So what that particular company was doing well in terms of sales, whereas in terms of price of stock, they were down. So it is now left to them to determine, is it sales we want to do better, or is it in terms of stock price? So that's where that performance reference is also important. If you are doing well in one aspect, you may not be doing well in other one. So that is why it's better for us to go and see how our competitors are performing in the market.
The stock value you mentioned, that actually happens by the perception. So no matter how much sales you might be making and you are measuring your performance growth on year on year. I grew 10 years this year, I grew 10 years. For instance, as a pastor, I look at my records. I have 2 key records, spiritual report and financial. And I then look at these 2 reports, for instance. And I say, how many people came to church? Okay, if they came to church, how many gave their lives? Who really want to enjoy eternity in heaven? I preach it every day. And you are doing measurement. So I am measuring that. But I can be celebrating, thanking God. 2 people came to my church. When you then go to your neighbor church, there are 1,000 people there. Then you need to go for prayer and go somewhere and say, no, I'm not doing well. I'm not doing well. So that is what the reference means. Yeah. So that is why what we are sharing now is good for ministry, is good for those who are in whatever practice, is good for business people, it's for everyone. It's for everyone. So that you don't get complacent. Reference as an approach to measurement is actually telling you don't be complacent. Don't believe on old glories. I was talking to a friend of mine, and that my friend is so loved the way we used to do things. He would tell me, say, the old days was airplane. He said, the old days were very good. The old days. I said, in the old days, did you have cars?
At John School of Management, Innovation and Enterprise, inventing the future. Here at John School of Management, we see the big picture. We are inventing a world-class institution, an institution at the core of cutting-edge research, learning, and entrepreneurship. We are accredited by the National Board for Technical Education, NBTE, John School of Management, Innovation and Enterprise.
Before this man died, Sir Victor Wifo, he sang a big song. A big song. He said, people are telling me I should go and be playing the Jeremiah I played in 1960. He said, I wish in 1960. He said there was no phone. He didn't have phone. He said, I cannot go back to my 1960 days. I am going to the future. So when you do measurements, and particularly the reference you talked about, you begin to define your performance based in the context of what the environment is today. So what is going to, and what do you even anticipate into the future that will be emerging, and that is where that this man was always beating others, Steve Jobs. He knew how to look into the future. For those of you who have not visited Epcot Center, I want to encourage you, if you're watching us on this program, I will encourage you, go to Epcot Center. Epcot Center, I went there the first time in 1988. And when I entered Epcot Center, I was taken onto, somewhere where they were showing me how the world will be in 100 years. In 100 years' time. It's in Orlando. The place in Orlando, in the United States of America. So I think it was in the Shell booth. And then said, look in there. As they took me, I spent about an hour. They were telling me how the future, the next 100 years. Okay? Now, Epcot Center. So I visited the Epcot Center again some 5 years ago. 5 years again, 5 years ago, to see how will the next 100 years be. So the issue of reference, I'm just now coming back to the measurement that you, Prof, have spoken about. Measurement is when you then look at the context of that 100 years, there are certain preparation required if you are going to be a part of those to survive into that 100 years. So if you do not know where you are going and you are so content where you are, what then happens ultimately is that you are dying. That is why this issue is so important. The issue of not just comparing yourself with yourself every time. It's for you to look at yourself and then say, you know, in a very, sometimes you can call it prophetic, declare it. This is the way I see the future and speak to it. But don't just speak it, do it. You know, work towards it. And that's why when they showed 100 years, some companies embraced what they saw. Others say, hey, forget it, we are the way we used to do it. When Mokopa came down, let's continue like that. All of them are dead. The companies are dead. But those one who then, you know, using this measure, look at the dimension reference, and looking forward, they are surviving into the future. That is why sometimes the biggest company in the world, some of them are not up to 20 years old. Facebook, for instance, when did they come? Yeah. When Jeff Bezos, how did they become so wealthy? Became the wealthiest one. I don't know whether it's the wealthiest this year. It was just amazing. What are they doing? Carrying package from one place to the other. They don't carry food even. Bring food to your house. How can somebody just carry in food and become the richest in the world? Just carrying things around. But you know what Jeff did? He was able to look onto the future. That a time will come when people are no longer talking about just delivery, they are talking about solutions. And solutions essentially are driven by technology. And Jeff Bezos went into technology and then became the wealthiest person on earth. There is so much you can, you know, go into the future. There is so much that you can do for you to be able to live into that. And that, when he was using 4 to 500, you know, I want to come to Mr. Ebi now. You know, he will have some notes on that, and after that, I will close this episode.
Thank you very much, sir. Just to come back to that point we're making our reference, even Paul said it in the scripture. You know, you mentioned not being complacent.
Yes.
He said the things that I've achieved, I leave them behind, and I'm pressing towards a higher mark.
Exactly.
So when you look at those things, it's not for you to get too satisfied and Jesus himself also said it when he was talking about the parable. Was it a parable? Now, a story of the rich man that said, I'm comfortable, I've made everything, so let me just relax and enjoy myself. So it's just, whether you look at it from the context of the scripture, from being religious, or even in the corporate world, it's something you must have to benchmark yourself against, you know, moving forward. Take people that are moving forward, what have they done, and how do you want to also either surpass them or be ahead of them. That's so right. the reference, when we talked in one of the episodes, we said market share. That also gives a picture of, look, where am I? Am I really making progress in this? And when you begin to do that kind of assessment, it tells you, look, I'm not doing well, let me up my game. And you now begin to put measures in place, structures in place to ensure that that performance that you want to achieve, you achieve it. It's a way of gauging yourself and driving yourself to the next level.
Mindshare Communications Limited is a world-class marketing, communications, and branding consultancy firm located in Lagos State, Nigeria. We offer a wide array of consultancy and promotional services to corporate businesses and firms. Our services include strategic marketing activities, public relations, advertising, social media management, digital marketing, web development, brand development, marketing activation, strategic branding, market intelligence activities, and telecoms, ranging from CUG management to airtime vending. Call Mindshare Communications today to help you achieve your goals. For further information, please contact Abiola on 0807 739 0974. Send a mail to info@mindsharelimited.com or visit our website at www.mindsharelimited.com. Address 184A Kaduna Road, Crystal Estate, and Muwadafi Estate, Lagos.
everyone for being a part of this today. And let me just tell you this. Even if you are a farmer and then you need to up your game, you need to perform, please, even a farmer, those farming rights now, congratulations all of you, we are so proud of you. Those going to wheat, we don't have to be going to be bringing wheat and all this into our country, Nigeria. So I want to thank all of you for the great things you guys are doing. But you need these tools to assist you. These tools that we'll be talking about, looking at measures. Measures not just in itself, but referentially. In other words, there's some dimension in which you look into the future and then look at even the people around you. And so when you do that, you are actually going to get onto a point of superior performance, and ultimately you manage your performance excellently well. This will I bring it to a close today, and I want to thank all of you who've been part of this. Until I come your way again, may the good Lord bless you and stay safe. Bye-bye.